Kore Mwafinduka and welcome to Africa Good Morning, your weekly news show that brings you Africa's potent stories. I am Glenora Shipura. Starting off today, we begin in Zambia as the legal battle over former President Edgar Lungu's burial reaches a new chapter after the government accepts a South African appeal court ruling. We also head to South Africa as police launch a costly security operation ahead of anti-immigration protests. To Kenya, where an Ebola quarantine project has been halted following court action, and to Rome, where Pope Leo XIV is urging renewed efforts against hunger. We also bring you the Botswana Report with Rorisang Mogojwe and economic insights from agricultural economist Wandile Sihlobo on fertilizer and fuel prices. We will be right back with this and more on the other side of this.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises, from artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative sport tourism.
In our top stories, more than a year after the death of Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu, his family have won their appeal to have his body buried in South Africa, where he died, overturning a high court ruling that allowed the Zambian government to repatriate his remains. The ruling, delivered on Tuesday by the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein, appears to bring to a close a legal dispute shaped by a long-standing feud between Lungu and his successor, President Hakainde Hichilema. The Zambian government had argued that as a former head of state, Lungu should be accorded a state funeral and buried alongside previous presidents at the presidential burial ground in Lusaka. However, his family sought a private burial after funeral negotiations with the government broke down. Justice Raylene May Cately said the ritual intended to bring closure had instead placed family and state in a prolonged legal battle. Following the ruling, Attorney General Mulilo Kabesha said the government respected the South African court decision despite disagreeing with the majority judgment, confirming it will not exercise its right to appeal to the Constitutional Court and will not take the matter any further. Here is AGM correspondent Mike Sichula with more.
Africa, good morning to our dear viewers. Thank you very much for having me. This is quite an interesting case. It has taken over 1 year since President Edgar Lungu died on the 5th of June 2025 in South Africa, where he had gone to seek medical attention. So in the past 1 year, the Zambian government and the Lungu family have been involved in the legal battle as to who must bury the remains of President Edgar Lungu. So in the last 1 year, this matter has been before the courts. And in August last year, 2025, the High Court in Pretoria ruled in favor of the Zambian government that they had the rights to repatriate the remains of Mr. Lungu to Lusaka for official burial. That matter was contested by the Lungu family, such that the remains of Dr. Lungu were not repatriated to Zambia because the Lungu family had appealed the judgment. So yesterday, the 23rd of June 2026, the Supreme Court of South Africa delivered an historical ruling, and the ruling read as follows. The Supreme Court overturned the 2025 High Court ruling that granted the Zambian government rights to repatriate and bury late President Edgar Lungu with full state honors. The court upheld an appeal by the Lungu family, and the court stated that the Zambian government failed to establish a legal right to override the family's wishes regarding the burial of the former head of state. I read in part the full judgment. So in this judgment, the majority judges delivered a verdict that gave full control of the remains of Dr. Lungu to the Lungu family. There was a minority judge who interpreted the law in support of the Zambian government. But as we also know, the majority wins. So in this case, the Zambian government, according to President Edgar Lungu, wanted to uphold the Zambian constitution, which states that they wanted to uphold the Zambian constitution by ensuring that the former president, Mr. Lungu, is buried with full honors at the state as a former head of state. But the Lungu family, on the other hand, told the court that they objected to that because, according to them, Mr. Lungu told them that once he dies, he did not want Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, the current president, to be anywhere near his body. So now, with this case that has divided the nation, we are yet to be told as to whether the Zambian government is going to appeal this case until the Supreme Court. But Attorney General Mulira Kabesha, before the judgment was delivered, he said that the Zambian government was going to respect the court's decision. A similar statement that was issued by family spokesperson Mr. Makebi Zulu. So now Zambians have also reacted to this judgment, and they're hoping that this judgment is going to bring this matter to a conclusion. As we all know that Zambia currently is in the period of the general elections, and they hope that this matter is going to be concluded so that something can be resolved outside court. Thank you very much for having me. Africa, good morning.
In our next story, Acting Police Minister Farouz Kashalia has warned against lawlessness during anti-immigrant protests planned for the 30th of June, saying violence will not be tolerated and no one should participate in demonstrations while armed. Now, speaking at a press conference on Monday, the 22nd of June, Kashalia said everyone has the constitutional right to protest peacefully and within the confines of the law, but criminality, intimidation, violence, destruction of property, and attempts to undermine public safety would not be tolerated. He said authorities had hesitated for too long to address the matter directly and stressed there was no reason for anyone to attend a protest carrying any instrument that could be used as a weapon. Kashalia said the government was sending a clear message that people should participate in protest action unarmed. He was joined by Defense Minister Engi Motshekga and Acting South African Police Service National Commissioner Lieutenant General Puleng Dipane, who briefed the media on preparations ahead of the 30th of June deadline set by anti-immigrant groups. Kashalia said the special operation aimed at countering destabilization efforts is costing taxpayers more than 600 million rands. Moving on to our next story, Kenya Health Minister stops Ebola facility after court contempt finding. Kenya's Health Minister Aden Duale has halted construction of a controversial US-funded Ebola quarantine facility a day after being found in contempt of court for disregarding a judge's ruling. Appealing in court on Tuesday, Duale apologized and said he had directed the immediate and complete cessation of construction at a military base in Nanyuki. Last month, the High Court ordered that work on the 50-bed isolation center stop until a case brought by a rights group could be heard. However, a judge ruled on Monday that Duale had ignored the order and permitted the project to continue. The facility was intended for U.S. citizens suspected of contracting Ebola during the current outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. High Court Judge Patricia Nyundi accepted Duale's apology and discharged him with a stern warning. Duale said both the Kenyan and U.S. governments had agreed to suspend the proposed collaboration following the court order. BBC verified analysis of satellite imagery indicated further development at the site. Protests in Nanyuki against the project have left 3 people dead as police dispersed demonstrators. In our next story, Pope Leo XIV calls access to food a fundamental human right. Pope Leo XIV has urged the international community to strengthen commitment and resources aimed at addressing the root causes of hunger and malnutrition, describing access to adequate food as a fundamental human right. Speaking during a visit to the World Food Programme headquarters in Rome on Monday, the 22nd of June, the pontiff said meeting this need not only alleviate suffering, but also addressing underlying causes of geopolitical instability. His remarks come as WFP reports that 266 million people across 48 countries were acutely food insecure in 2025. Pope Leo criticized bureaucratic and political barriers to humanitarian action, saying conflicts are fed more readily than people are nourished, and describing food security as an essential component of global and integral security. WFP Acting Executive Director Carl Scow highlighted the growing challenge conflict poses to humanitarian work, saying wars destroy markets, farms, roads, and trust. During the visit, Pope Leo laid a wreath at WFP's memorial wall honoring 171 staff members who died in service. WFP assistance reached 121 million people in more than 120 countries and territories in 2025. The following footage was distributed by the Catholic Church.
Your institution's commitment resonates profoundly with the Catholic Church's mission to uphold human dignity and to foster fraternity rooted in the Gospel's call to love our neighbor. Together, we share the urgent task of confronting hunger and malnutrition, while also tackling the underlying structural causes that sustain them. To meet this task effectively, we must examine the challenges before us, their underlying causes, and the paths toward lasting solutions. Today, crises have evolved from isolated events into persistent realities marked by prolonged conflicts, chronic food insecurity, economic volatility, and growing climate vulnerabilities. This raises a fundamental question. What configuration of the global order is capable of producing, reproducing, and at times normalizing such conditions. The issue is no longer limited to how to intervene. Rather, it extends to understanding why the system constantly produces the very problems it's then forced to correct.
We now take a look at the Botswana Report with Rorisang, starting us off. Mushupa family buries son amid ongoing mortuary. Rorisang, can you get into the story?
A bizarre story which has members of the public reeling in shock and in concern. Now, the burial, which happened this past Saturday, follows weeks of uncertainty surrounding the disappearance of Pitso's body, which the family says was mistakenly cremated after being incorrectly identified at a mortuary in the village of Tamaga, where the family is from. Now, according to the family spokesperson, who is the uncle to the deceased, the mortuary eventually identified the root of the body swap or the mix-up, after which the DNA analysis which was conducted on the remains proved inconclusive, making it impossible to scientifically confirm the identity of the deceased. Now, the family says the experts attributed these inconclusive results to the effects of the chemicals and the processes associated with cremation, which eventually compromised the ability to obtain a definitive DNA match. And despite this, despite the uncertainty surrounding the DNA results, the family proceeded with the burial anyway on Saturday, as they were hoping for closure, and they laid to rest what is believed to be their son's ashes in Moshopa. Now, this controversy, Ashwin, stems from, claims that this body mix-up, which occurred at a specific mortuary, resulted in Pitso's body being allegedly mistaken for that of a certain Emmanuel Mudarikiriye, who was cremated. The body of Emmanuel Mudarikiriye was initially sent to that specific mortuary before being moved to the home village in a different part of the country in Mahalape. And so his cremation proceeded at a cremation center, which belongs to the same mortuary or the same mortuary company, but in a different village, like I said. And so this case has sparked widespread public concern regarding the identification procedures within funeral services industries or companies. However, police investigations into this era remain ongoing, and the family does hope to gain some sort of closure pertaining to the mix-up after police investigations, have concluded. However, as it stands, authorities have not yet announced the outcome of these investigations. And so the family says that while burial proceedings did bring some level of closure, they will continue to seek answers regarding the circumstances that led to this mix-up of bodies at the mortuary.
Now, in your next story, the First Lady raises concern over disability maternal health gaps.
First Lady Gaoneboko was participating for the first time in the virtual Merck Foundation Africa-Asia Luminary 2026 conference, which features First Ladies from across the African continent. Now, during her remarks, Boko highlighted the need for stronger investment in healthcare systems that support children from their earliest stages of life. And so she noted that children with disabilities in Botswana are not being identified or assessed early enough. And this is often because of limited access to specialized services, specialized diagnostic equipment, as well as assessment tools. And so she is of the belief that delayed diagnosis can significantly affect a child's educational journey by postponing access to interventions, to therapies and support services that are needed to improve learning outcomes. She also argues that early detection remains critical in ensuring that children with developmental, learning, or physical disabilities receive the appropriate assistance before challenges become more severe. And so she called for greater investment in healthcare programs focused on early diagnosis, maternal care, as well as reproductive health, arguing that stronger support systems would benefit families and contribute to the overall improved social and economic outcomes.
Now, Rorisang, due to time, we're just going to do your last story, which is the President defends use of state jet for Lesotho Premier. Can you briefly get into this?
Well, the issue sparked or generated public debate following the Lesotho Prime Minister's arrival aboard the Botswana presidential aircraft, which is the OK1. He was in town for the inaugural Botswana-Lesotho Binational Commission, which was held in Gaborone last week. And so critics, including opposition figures, have questioned whether the use of the presidential aircraft was justified, especially at a time where now the government is facing fiscal constraints and increasing pressure to manage public expenditure. And if you do recall, Ashwin, we have reported here several times that the economy of Botswana has taken a major hit following the decline in diamond revenue. And so the national coffers are running at an all-time low. However, President Duma Boko has defended this move or this decision, saying that it was influenced by logistical challenges which were experienced on the Lesotho side, and so should be viewed within the context of regional cooperation and diplomatic engagement, something which he says is common among the member states of the Southern African Development Community, or SADC. And so he maintains that Botswana's support actually reflected that very spirit of partnership and neighborly relations that underpins cooperation among SADC member states. Now, meanwhile, the Botswana-Lesotho Binational Commission brought together officials from both countries to discuss areas of mutual interest, as well as strengthen bilateral relations. And so amongst the outcomes of the meeting was Botswana's commitment to provide Lesotho with doses of foot and mouth disease vaccine to assist Lesotho in responding to its first recorded outbreak of the disease. Now, this outbreak in Botswana is currently ongoing and has reached crisis levels. However, the government is currently working around the clock to contain the outbreak by employing several measures to sort of curb any further spread after, Botswana lost its key export market of the livestock, which is the European Union. Now, the two nations also discussed opportunities for increased cooperation in areas including trade, agriculture, infrastructure development, and other sectors matters, which was aimed at strengthening these economic ties. And so both President Boko and Prime Minister Matekane described this commission as an important milestone in relations between Botswana and Lesotho. Meanwhile, the government through President Duma Boko has defended the move to transport the Prime Minister to and from using the OK-1 presidential aircraft. Again, he argues that the long-term benefits of strengthened diplomatic and economic cooperation far outweighs concerns raised about transport arrangements.